Welcome to another episode of The More You Know. Today I'm joined with Paul. Paul, can you give me an introduction of yourself?
Yeah, hey, I'm Paul. Like probably many of you, unfortunately, I've been laid off recently due to the COVID or the pandemic. Before this, I was working in the casino industry, and even before that, I was working in the airline industry before I unfortunately got laid off from that. So, having a lot of experience being laid off, currently just running my own podcast, and I'm happy to be on the show today.
Hey, that's awesome that you decided to take things into your own hand and start your own podcast. Because I feel like during this pandemic, a lot of people started their own business along with their podcast. If you don't mind me asking, are you able to disclose what airline?
Yeah, so I used to actually work for Continental Airlines, and then if anyone knows about Continental Airlines, they merged with United Airlines, and they stuck with the United mantra instead of Continental because I guess it was a more well-known brand. And then worked for United Airlines then for 3 or 4 more years before getting laid off.
Gotcha. What'd you do at
So
United?
yeah, so I was a baggage handler, and then I also worked the ticket counter as well. So I did pretty much what we say, anything above or below the wing.
Which one did you prefer mostly?
Honestly, I liked Below the Wing, even though I'm a people person. It just people can be real shitty if things aren't going well when you're working above the wing, and because of that, it just depends on the day that you're just like, I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah. How many how often would you get people like rushing to you and say, "Hey, I just missed my flight. Do you have anything else for me?"
You would get less people that be rushing to you more than you would have another airline that would call, and let's say like American Airlines canceled a flight or had to cancel a flight. They're now trying to rebook a bunch of people over to you to put people on. So then they're giving you a call to kind of give you a heads up because it was kind of the industry standard to let them know, because then you're having to go back in and try to find seats that are available and start assigning these people, so when they come over, depending on how quickly that time frame was, because you're always asked to be there at least 30 minutes prior or longer beforehand, so depending on what your window was, they still got to run through security, and for you to make it easier for yourself, you got to get those people on.
Gotcha. What's some crazy stories that you've heard? Because I feel like if you work at like a airline and you're like in the airport, you probably see some crazy stuff.
Yeah, man. What story can I tell? Do you want above the wing story or below the wing, or do you have a preference, or does it matter?
We'll start with above the wing and then we'll transition into under the wing.
Gotcha. The most above the wing story I'd ever say I had is probably, you hear this every once in a while, is when you get people that get real either drunk, and then you have to make that decision to tell them they can't be on the flight. So
Oh
I had
God.
a person that was like that, where our flight had been delayed twice due to weather, and so the passenger was already kind of like, I'm in business class sort of person, blah 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 blah. So I gave him a food voucher or whatever because of his status. Let him go off. He came back like 3 hours later after we made the call, saying that the flight was ready to go, and he was inebriated out of his mind.
Oh man.
So I was the guy at the gate at that time too, so I was asked to kind of like step in and make that decision to let him know that we were making the decision not to put him on the flight. And unfortunately, he tried to take a swing at me, so
Oh no.
I graciously was able to slip it, and you can't really put hands on the customer, so I kind of had to like bump him with my chest to kind of give him a little bit of a nudge to make that space, and then one of the other people and caught it and gave a call. And so airport security is pretty decent, and there was someone right around the corner, so it didn't get too wild, but it got to a point where at least the cops had to arrive. And yeah, so we had that issue where he got arrested then for that, because most airports, I don't think a lot of people know, they actually have their own dedicated police force that are
Wait,
just for that.
really?
Yeah. So every airport that you'll ever see, if it's above a certain amount of flights, like there's different tier classes for airports or whatever. But if you're tier 4 or above, it means that you're handling a certain amount of flights coming out of your airport, that they have to have some sort of dedicated security or police force then for that airport.
That's interesting. I did not know that. And dude, that person who got really drunk at the airport, how though? Because yeah, getting a drink at the airport is cool if like you're waiting, but like the premiums on like the alcohol there is like insane.
I mean, if you own your own business, if you can write it off, if you're just that rich and you don't give a shit, sort of thing. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
lots of situations. There's some people are just alcoholics. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not the
yeah,
first time I've had to deal with the airlines and dealing with drunk people. That was always just my favorite story, just because that guy just got arrested for it.
yeah. Have you ever thought about becoming a flight attendant?
So it's not without the wheelhouse of things that I could or could not have done. The reason why I liked working in the specific location or airport I was at was I was based. So with flight attendants, you get based out of a airport, but sometimes that airport doesn't end up being the city that you're living in because it's based off of need for that airport. So you could be going through training and be from Nebraska, but you might have to fly out of New York. So every time you want to go to work, you have to fly 6 or 8 hours or the day beforehand to reach your destination so you can wake up the next day or afternoon or evening or whatever your scheduled time was to be there at the airport to catch that flight so you can be out of there.
That's crazy.
Well, I mean, think about that. I mean, flight attendants honestly don't get paid that much, especially if you're a regional flight attendant versus a international or transatlantic flight attendant. So you're only getting paid like $12, $14 an hour. If you're living in Chicago or based out of New York or some extreme city like that, you're not making enough money to even be able to pay your bills. So if you're not from that city and you're based out of there and you have a family or subgroup of people you can stay with, you're not gonna be able to pay your bills.
Really? I didn't know that. I don't know. I thought I read somewhere where flight attendants, I thought they actually make like decent money, at least like 40 to 50.
Southwest is the only airline company out there that actually pays their people a damn. But if you're working from like JetBlue, Spirit, Frontier, some of these smaller airlines like that, you're not getting paid beans. And then even if you're working for United or one of these Delta, you're still getting paid like the 15 to 16 range. Now, this again was 4 or 5 years ago before I got laid off. So it was a little bit ago, but still, I can't see that. I can't imagine they raised it that much.
Gotcha, gotcha.
But if
Yeah.
you're international, then you're making somewhere in like the starting of 30 or 35. And the only way you get to international is one of two things. You either apply to the job and you have exceptional language skill where you need to be able to speak another language and they'll test you
Mm.
on and they'll send you through rigorous testing, or you're just in the airline industry so long that your seniority eventually gets to a point where you can start now working international flights. Because do you ever fly international?
I have not. I have never.
Oh, really? So
Yeah.
you'll notice with at least American carriers that most of the people when you fly international are a little bit up there in the age group, and most of the reason why is it took them 20 years or 10 or 15 years for them to get to that point, and then they're making such buku money they don't ever retire or quit. So you got people that are in their 60s and their 70s that are still flight attendants that are making all this money and wanting to travel abroad and go see other countries, and that's they've been used to that lifestyle for so long they won't quit. So then all these younger, more attractive, more experience, or not as experienced, but like more mobile people that could be a little bit more fun to have on the flight, you never have. You just have these old grumpy old people that are still flight attendants after X amount of years.
They get to go to France every single week.
Yeah.
The perks of it.
Yeah, but I mean, the layover though sometimes, and a lot of people don't understand this as well. Sometimes your layover is not always that well. You might fly into France, have a 24-hour crew rest, and then you're flying out the next day. But between you landing, getting to the hotel, getting a shower, falling asleep, you're pretty much waking up, maybe catching breakfast or brunch somewhere. Let's say France, like you said, for example. Maybe you will go walk around for a little bit, but by the time it's 2 or 3, you got to make sure you're back at your hotel, shower, changed again, grabbing your bag and getting back to the airport so you can make it through security, because next thing you know, you're flying back out at like 6 or 8 or whatever for that flight back to on that flight.
Yeah, and I couldn't imagine the jet lag too. Like if you fly from the US to another part of the country and then expect to be on their time zone immediately, I would imagine that would be pretty hard.
Well, most of the flights when you leave, like if you go to Asia, for example, because I have a lot of experience flying over there, most of the flights back to the United States are later in the evening because of
Hmm.
that time difference. It's not like you're arriving there and people are flying out right there immediately in the morning. Well, afternoon, evening. But what I'm saying is like it's mandated by the government that you at least have to have a 24-hour rest period because they want to make sure that you're fresh
Yeah, makes sense.
for the next flight.
That makes sense. Now, take me through what it's like to work under the wing then.
So under the wing, I mean, it's really fun. It's kind of just the same thing over and over again. You know, you're playing lands. So let's think about that. When you're playing lands, you're taxiing them to the gate where they're just driving up. Then the people there, there's three of us that are marshalers. So you're the main guy in the front and two guys on the side, making sure that people aren't running into the plane because I guess that's happened in the past before. So they felt that like there had to be people that were standing out there to make sure that you knew not to run into it. You know, you think you see this huge ass 30-ton plane coming through that you would stop, but it's I guess it's happened in the past before. So you got your side wing marshalers and you got your front marshaler. They'll actually tell the pilot where to stop because they have to. You have like a 3-foot window gap that that plane has to stop in for it to make it easier to be the upstairs person to park that gate at the door. Because if you have it too far out or too close, I don't know why the technology hasn't gotten here yet, but you can only stretch that gate so far, or you can only contract it in so far that that plane is parked terribly. Sometimes you'd have to actually set up the tow bar, which is the thing that pushes the plane out back a little bit, or you have to have the pilot like re-up the engines again and push everybody. So if you've ever been on a
Well, I,
plane and you're listening and you've ever had that jarring experience where like you all of a sudden jump forward even though you think you're standing up, it's because that's what happened is the marshaller didn't park them right.
wow,
But
I
then
will.
yeah, go ahead.
I'll have to keep more like attention when I
Yeah, I
do
mean
fly again.
nobody ever knows this stuff, but like when you look out the window or whatever, like if you're watching them, it's pretty much the same thing. Then you wait for the engines to spiral down. Once you see the engine cuts off, that's when you get to the side of the plane. You can go and lift the doors up. Then it just someone climbs in, tosses the bags down, try to sort them the best as you can at the bottom as far as like priority customers, the people that paid more money to get their bag first versus people that are in the back, and then when you get to the belt, the idea is that you put the priority bags on first, then the other bags secondly, and then that's how pretty much. Yeah.
How often is that rule really followed? Like,
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Some people are really good about it, and some people just don't give a damn. And the quality for the job, unfortunately, I always complained about this wasn't there. So, you know, depending again, if you have someone that's been working under the plane for 20, 30, 40 years, they're jaded at this point. They don't give a damn. And then you got people that just started and they don't give a damn. It's more like that sweet spot of where I was at, where like you're 5 years in and you're just starting to make better money and you're kind of excited about the job and you feel complacent and you feel, you know, strong and capable that you want to do a better job. And then, you know, eventually it's like this bell curve, I guess you could think about it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely understand that. So, what the gist of what you're saying is that you shouldn't pay priority for your bags.
Well, priority comes normally with your ticket. So if you're riding business class or in a big enough plane where there's first class as well, those people automatically get priority. Except if you want to turn around and pay an extra $20 to get it. But again, you know, yeah, like you said, it's kind of like depending on where what airport you're at. But you should know, you know, if you fly enough, which airports are better at following rules or where people give more of a damn than others.
Gotcha on that.
But here's the other
Oh,
trick to it, real quick, though, is the reason why I got laid off was, like I told you before, there's tiers for airline companies. Tier 5, 4, and 3, all of us were laid off back in 2014. So most of these regional or smaller airlines that you're going to, or cities rather, you actually have contracted third-party companies that are being paid to run those. So they might even be wearing the clothes, but they're not technically working for United or working for um, American Airlines or whatever.
What?
they're actually contracted out. So that's how I lost my job, was they found it cheaper. So
Oh
our
my god.
so here's the kicker. You use $25 as the max out for the job. You used to get paid $25 after your 10 years of service. So they fired everybody and started everyone off at $12, and you could come back to work for them if you wanted to as a contractor or not. But everyone got laid off, was given a severance, and then you're given the decision to go or not.
Wait, and these are at smaller airports, you said?
Yeah, so pretty much the only airports I would say definitely I could probably say for sure that still has actual United or whatever airline workers would be major hubs. Do you know what a hub is?
Uh, I want to say it's like an airport.
It's an airport, but it's like normally international or where you normally fly into. So
Oh, okay. So
let's
like
say
Atlanta.
yeah, Atlanta, that's deltas, exactly. Yeah. So if you ever like let's say you live in the Midwest or something and you need to first fly to Chicago before you can fly to DC. Well, DC is a major hub as well. I'm just saying if you need to fly to Chicago first so then you can go to Minneapolis or something or one of these other smaller airports like Reno or something, you would have to whenever you do a connection to one place first before you go to somewhere else, 9 times out of 10, those are regional ones.
Hmm.
So New York, I could say without a doubt, I know New York, Chicago, Houston, Atlanta, as you had said, Miami, DC, Denver, LA, and Seattle, and part of Reno used to be, but or not Reno, but Vegas used to be. But anything that has international in the name is pretty much those connecting ones. But if you don't have international in your name, pretty much anyone that you're going to see is going to be a contracted person.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, unfortunately.
The deception. That's very
It's
unfortunate.
deception, and they're just trying to cut costs because they're just cheap.
So, in the instances of where there's like a layover,
Yeah.
and it's like 20 or 30-minute layover, does
hmm
that put stress on the people under the wing to like rushing things? And is that how a lot of like missing baggages come up?
No, no. 9 times out of 10, if something's delayed, the under the wing people have it pretty easy because you leave the bags in there until the gate's like, oh, so and so decided to step off, or we decided to transfer that person. Then you got to climb in there and find one bag or two bags out of, let's say, a sea of 50 bags, and you don't know where you put it in there, right? So it could be right there in the front. You grab it, like, bam, done. Let's take it over to, United Airlines or UA Airlines or whatever, or Delta, right? But if they're the first bag you might have loaded in there, they're stacked underneath everything else. So then you have to go and take all your hard work of loading these bags in there and take that one or two bag out and then stack them all back in there. So under the wing only sucked when it would be like there's a 2 hour delay and all of a sudden, you got one person getting pulled 10 minutes and then another 5 minutes and 13. Everyone there underneath the wing has to make a decision. Are we gonna pull all the bags out and just have to restack it? Or are we gonna try to just keep playing Jenga and pull one bag out at a time? And hopefully
Oh
there's not that many people.
my god.
Yeah.
Sounds very stressful.
The only thing that ever sucked is if you have a lot of bags and you got a small plane, I mean, it's kind of like Jenga or Tetris. You can think about when you just have to stack bags. You have to make sure how you're putting the bags in, where you're putting the bags in, because it's not like a
Oof.
box half the time. It's ergonomic, where it's like you might have a V shape or you might have a circular shape, or it
Really?
might, yeah, under the plane. Every plane has a different size, measurement, and structure. So, you had to really be good about playing, like I said, Jenga or Tetris, where you're like, all right, I can start off with small bags on the bottom on this first row. Then it's all gonna be bigger bags on the second row. And then maybe by the fourth row, you gotta put small bags or handheld bags on the top because those are the only ones that could fit in there.
That's actually crazy. Wow.
Yeah, people don't understand that, like, at least with this job, it's not like people are just going in there and sometimes it looks like they're tossing it in there, but they're only ever toss it in there if they know they have enough space. If they don't, there's somebody up there having to think about the design of where they're going to put things at.
See, I would have never known this. I always look out and I just see them tossing it on the conveyor belt, and
Yeah, but toss it in the
that's
conveyor
the end
belt.
of it.
Yep, and then that goes up to the top, and there's a guy underneath in that bin, and then he's stacking it.
Have you ever seen like mini rivalries between airlines at like an airport? Like, are you driving and then you see like, say, a Delta person? Well, not Delta because they're not in. They have their own special terminals usually.
Well, like
Have
the
you
small
seen?
regional ones, we're all close to each other. So I worked out of the Columbus International Airport. So we had all of us close to each other. Everyone would be on their own separate wing, but we all shared the same bag room. But it's kind of
Uh,
but it's kind of like, it's kind of not like a rivalry. It's more like camaraderie because everyone knows
yeah,
what everyone else is doing. So everyone else is trying to help everybody else. 9 times out
yeah.
of 10, you still got those assholes that are out there. But
Yeah,
oh,
I didn't know if you had like the snobby like spirit people saying, "Ooh, we're gonna do this better than you guys" and all that.
the only one that was ever snobby was just Southwest, from the standpoint that they
No
always.
way.
Well, no, they get paid better. They had better unions. The company was betterly structured. They actually gave a damn about their worker. So if you're working for Southwest in America, I would say you're working for the best company because they actually gave a damn about their worker. They've never really laid anybody off before. They've never had to do cutbacks more than once that I've ever heard of, and they really didn't get rid of those people. They just put them on furlough till later.
Gotcha,
So
gotcha.
really, they're the echelon of better customer service, better flight experience because the people there are treated like people, where the rest of us were not treated like people. But at the same time, when your fear is that you're always going to lose your job, that also brought a lot of animosity until it eventually happened, which it did. But it was always that fear you had in the back of your mind, as you don't know when that moment was going to happen.
Gotcha, gotcha. And before we hop to casinos, if
Yeah,
there's one thing that you've learned in the airline industry while you're working there, what's like a couple like hacks or some tips that people can do today if they plan on flying?
man.
Any
It,
tips?
I don't know if there's tips for it nowadays because it's changed so much. Because like you have the self checkout kiosks now that are up and stuff, and so since you're not dealing with a person half the time, it's really kind of hard to try to manipulate or say anything or talk to anybody. And then the people behind the counter 9 times out of 10 aren't, like I said, people that are working for the actual airport itself.
Hmm.
So they don't really give a damn, which is sad to
Gotcha.
say. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I would say that the only hack or anything I would say is, or the only thing I'd want to take away from people that fly is if you're going out of the major airports and stuff, just be really nice to like people in Chicago or those major hubs that I mentioned before, because those are still the people that are still working for the airline industry, and they've had to gone through lots of trivial times and deal with a lot of crap just to be able to keep the jobs that they're in. So please note that those people are really there for you. They're trying to work their hardest. And 9 times out of 10, like if your bag gets crushed or something gets destroyed, most of that is just from the flight itself, like bags and stuff shifting or moving and falling on things. And going back to where you said bags getting lost, a lot of times that actually ends up happening not to us per se as much. What happens is TSA makes the mistake.
Really?
Well, so now there's the pre-screening where your bag goes through an X-ray machine, and if they think that your bag has something in it and they got to pull it out, they'll pull it out. But if they're not secure or safe about it, they'll take your bag and they can put it on the wrong conveyor belt. So if your bag gets misplaced, half the time it could be that it was supposed to be on United, let's say, but they put it on the Southwest baggage belt line, and if the baggage person at Southwest doesn't catch it quick enough and can has the time to drive it over to our plane, then it's going to miss the flight.
Interesting.
So a lot
So
of
that's.
times, to me, it's more TSA because I only ever worked when TSA was around, because that happened after, unfortunately, 9/11.
Hmm.
But since then, I mean, I won't say that people don't make mistakes. People are humans. Sometimes people are lazy. Sometimes people are inept at their job, or sometimes it just falls out of the baggage cart. That's happened before, once to me. But 9 times out of 10, I would really just say that it's more the situation where TSA is the one that screwed it up
Got.
than anything else.
Never. I never would have guessed that. But yeah, take me through casino industry.
So yeah,
That
what
seems.
what do you want to know about the casino industry?
Let's start off with what'd you do?
So I luckily got and started in the promotions department, and then I moved up farther into it and did more of the advertising and did some of the entertainment at a casino.
What? Well, let's first. Well, my biggest question right now is entertainment. What do you do for entertainment?
So I dealt with the bands that we would hire that would come in locally, or like regional bands or national acts that would come through. So if we had like Blues Travelers that came through, or Any Money, or Flock of Seagulls, or the what was it? Now there's some other ones, but anyway, so like bands like that would come through. I would be the one that had to deal with them from the moment their crew and audio and everything came in, and make sure everyone's set up. Everything was set beforehand. If there was any troubles, then I would deal with different various teams to make sure that those problems were dealt with. Then we'd have the show, and then I'd make sure everything was on the up and up when they had to load out and leave for the casino, and then that was pretty much my job.
Interesting. Have you dealt with like a lot of well-known bands, or is it mostly like local?
Well, I would say where I worked at before, we worked with a lot of tribute bands, so bands that were playing under the montage of, like Kiss, for example, has a tribute band, so we deal with the Kiss tribute band, or we deal with a lot of 70s and 80s bands, because part of
Okay,
the marketing for it is I don't know how old you are, if you want to tell me or let anyone else know, but
I'm
I'm in my
23.
you're 23. Okay, so you're much younger, but I'm in my 30s. But anyways, so casinos aren't looking for you and I, because they know that you and I primarily don't have money. They're looking
That
for
is true.
people that are in their 40s or their 50s, where they're over their hump, where they already have, maybe kids have left the house or moved on, and now they have this expenditure of money and they don't know what to do with themselves. And most of these people go to casinos and spend their money there. So the live entertainment we had coming in, but I also dealt with boxing and MMA as well. We can talk about it if you want. But all the events that we had were geared towards, you know, bringing more older crowds in and drawing them in.
Gotcha. And then for your promos and your advertising, was that for the bands too, or was that for like bringing people into the actual casino?
So marketing promotions, our primary job has to deal with the players' cards. Have you ever been to a casino before?
I have.
Okay, so walk me through your experience when you've been to a casino before.
Normally like two levels, two stories. Smells like cigarettes. A lot of smells like cigarettes. A lot. Alcohol. A lot of alcohol.
Okay.
Bright, really, really bright lights,
Yep.
and a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. Were you more of a? Do you play it all when you go?
For me, when I go, it's usually start off with some blackjack, and then for
Okay.
me, I just started getting into roulette.
Oh, okay.
First, I started with the colors, and then now I'm slowly. Whenever I do get the chance to play, I play the numbers now.
Gotcha. Well, I'm assuming that when you are playing at a table, you know, and when you go in, mostly the first thing you should be normally seeing is some sort of promotion or somebody that's offering some sort of player's card to you, correct?
Uh, what do you mean by player's card?
So every casino has a player card system where if you're going to play at their casino, they want to make sure that you have their card. So what?
Oh, it's like the kind of like the reward system. I
Yeah,
want to say.
you can call
Yeah.
it
Okay.
rewards cards. It really just depends on what casino you play at. They all have
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
names, but pretty much it's a player's card or a rewards card. So that was
Yeah.
what I was trying to say. Is like the push is always to try to get you to sign up for this card. And our job in promotions is to push you to get that card and make sure you're playing with that card and always using that card and giving you the bonuses and the promotions that you get out of then playing with your card. That's what the
Now,
marketing
okay.
department does.
That makes sense now because now that you do mention this, I do remember that a lot of the times when I would sit down at like a table, the dealer would always say, "Do you have our card?" And
Yeah,
then I was like,
correct.
"What do you mean, like your card?" If you don't mind me asking, are you based in the Ohio area? Because you said you worked in the Columbus.
I worked in Columbus. I worked in Ohio casinos, and I worked in a couple other casinos since then
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, I've been to Jack's Casino and
Oh, in Cincinnati.
in Cleveland actually.
Oh yeah, there's the Cleveland one. Yep, yep, yep. There's two
Yep.
of them. Yep.
Yeah, I went to that one and it was so nice. I
Yeah,
love like
Jax is cool. I like the
it was
colors.
simple. It was
Yep.
simple, and I was like, it's everything that you need. Maybe if it had sports betting, but maybe one day we'll get there.
Well, the funny thing is the first casino I started in was actually called a racino because we had racing. So one thing that's interesting about casinos is based off of what state you're in, if your state even allows gambling, and if it is or is not a Indian tribe casino. The thing about casinos is that every casino is then controlled by the state, and they have their own commission and control, and they're the ones
Wait,
that.
what?
So, for example, Ohio has two different commission and controls for the casinos. The one that actually runs the casinos, and then you have the lottery in Ohio that runs the racinos because they're under a different licensing. Because the idea was is with racinos, you're playing a game of chance or luck, and lottery is looked at as a luck game because it's you never know if you're going to win. You know what I mean? You just if
Hmm.
you're actually playing the lottery, you're buying a scratch off ticket or you're buying a lottery ticket, and it's just pure luck if you win. You know what I mean? You have
Hmm.
no way to control it. But if you're playing cards, for example, it's a game of skill because you have to be the one to make the decision. At least in the state of Ohio, this is the way it is. But you have to make the one that makes the decision on if you're going to hold your hand, like with blackjack, or if you're going to take that next hit. So the way the Ohio deemed it was that they have it under two different commission and controls.
Interesting.
Yep. But anyways, the thing that was fun about working at a racino versus the casino then is because you can have both, but normally you have one or the other. So the ponies at one, and then I eventually ended up at the one that had cards. So it's just interesting to see how things changed a little bit with like promotion and how we're trying to draw people in as well.
Yeah. Wow. When what are your thoughts on making sports gambling kind of like a nationwide thing? Because I know that I think only a couple casinos have it.
I mean, I think something like what FanDuel or some of these online betting systems already control it, and because the internet is kind of a wild west of ideas because it's open to the world and it's hard to control. I think there's already a playground for it, and casinos only want to have them in their doors or trying to control some of it because it's more revenue that they're not receiving because there's already people doing it online, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The only way
That
to be
makes sense.
different was if you're a casino, you would definitely want there to be stronger limitations, so they have to force them to go to the casino to do it. Where like FanDuel or whatever started out in New York, where they're wanting more access and less restrictions. Whereas like there's this teeter totter right now, I think, in Congress fighting over what if you're allowed to gamble online because they want to get the taxes. In the end, the government only gives a shit about receiving the money that they get. You know,
Yeah,
so they just want to make sure to keep it in a wheelhouse where they could receive more. So the fight is casinos want them in there because like, yeah, sure, we'll give you guys X amount of dollars for doing it because they just care about getting people in the door. After that,
yeah,
they can make so much money so many different ways. FanDuel or online people that are doing it are like, yeah, we could pay you taxes as well, but because we're online, we shouldn't need to pay you as much, but there's no infrastructure. So then that's where that fight comes from. But as far as the betting aspect of it, I don't care. People bet on sports all the time. I mean, hell, the election's going on right now, and people are fighting over, probably making bets on who's going to win for Trump or Biden at this point. You know what I mean?
yeah. I definitely because like the good thing that I really enjoyed because when I went to Atlantic City, they did have sports betting. They had like kiosks there, and
Yeah.
the cool thing was that as soon as you won, you could cash in and get cash in hand right there. And honestly, it would be a smart idea for casinos to do that because if people because like for me
Yeah.
whenever I bet on some games, at the time it was baseball games, I won some money, and then what do you do with that money? Either you go spend it on some food that's at the casino, or
Yep.
you just take that and go gamble with it, which is
Yeah.
like a win-win. It's a win-win.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the casinos do have that luxury normally with most states to be able to do that. I think the only difference between online gambling with sports comparison to being in the casino is a lot of people don't like going out of their house, or they don't want to actually go to the casino itself. So it's easier to be able to sit at their house and do it there.
Yeah.
You know what I
Do
mean?
you find do you find it like do you do you find it like hard to keep track of time in a casino?
No, because I mean, it's like when I'm working there, obviously it's I'm there for 8 hours, so I want to get out of there as quickly as possible. So like anyone else, I'm looking at my watch every 10 or 15 minutes to be like, how much closer are we getting to this time? When is this going to be over, sort of thing. So that, but as far as people like a guest or something, yeah, we do have people that they lose track of time and they'll spend days there. I mean, if you
Do
want,
you
yeah, go ahead.
do you guys ever like kind of like mention something to people who do stay there for a long time?
No, so every casino is legal not to have some sort of notification to let people know that if you have a gambling addiction, that there's a number to call to get help, and there's also a hotline that you can call, and if you need to, you're actually allowed to restrict yourself if you want to from being entered into the casino. So
Oh wow.
If you Brian have an issue with going to the casino and you have a really big gambling addict, or you're an addict to it, and you realize one day like, man, I gotta step away from it, you can actually call the hotline up and be like, I need to put myself on like a year break. And then what that means is that you can't step into a casino at all for a year. And
Oh
nine
wow.
times out of 10, security will notice because they take your ID, or if they know you well enough because of that, if you're a well known player, which you should be if you're gambling that much, security will be given your name. So they'll be looking out for you. Because in some ways, casinos are like anything else where it's a little bit of a family thing, because most of the biggest players that are there are the same people that come in almost day in and day out and spend X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
So they know
Yeah.
when you're coming. So if you put yourself on a year break, they'll be like, Brian, you're not allowed in. And if you do somehow sneak by them and you get in and you gamble and they catch you, it's like a $10,000 or $20,000 fine, and you're up. You can go up to jail for a year for it as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
That holds you accountable though.
yeah. I mean, they try to help you. And the weird thing about it, and the thing that's also sad about it, is the way that the law is written with it. Is that you have to be the only person that put yourself on a restriction. So we get a lot of like sad calls from family members that will call and plead with the casino and be like, "Can you please put my husband or my son or my daughter or my kids off of it? Can you please stop them from coming in?" And it's illegal to do that. So we have to, unfortunately, as much as they plead, cry, and beg about it, we had to tell them that we couldn't do anything about it.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Have
So
you had to take these calls yourself, or have you just heard about them?
I've heard about them. They're just the hallways and stuff. I mean, those calls very rarely happen, but they do happen, and it's kind of some of the things they talk about during training, just to kind of let people know. There's like a separate line for that as well, and most of that's controlled by the commission that I told you about earlier. So
Hmm.
it's their program, so they're really the ones that are running it. We're just enforcing it for them because they're not like physically there themselves watching it or anything.
Gotcha. And with you working at a casino, like, did you sometimes just like stay after work just to like play some games yourself, or did you eventually get sick of the casino so much that you just didn't want to be there and you just wanted to go home?
Depending the company and the state, most times you cannot gamble at this casino that you work at.
Really?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like they think of it as like insider trading, for example,
Yeah, I
where like you
figured,
might
but
know the statistics on a game, or you might now have someone that works there that could possibly help you out. So,
yeah, I see that.
so for example, one of the casinos I worked for, they want to let you play at any of their casinos though at the same time. So even if I went to a different state, I still couldn't play in their
What?
casino.
Wow.
But the only one that you can, and it's the only state that I know of that has this, but Vegas is pretty much just a free for all. They don't care.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah, Vegas is just that's their whole shtick. Come for the fun, come for the play, and what's their other motto that they have? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
And as a closing argument, which industry did you prefer more, airline or casino?
I would say the airline industry only from the standpoint that I got to fly for free.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I was
that makes sense.
traveling with my job before, and the other reason I want to be an airline pilot or flight attendant was even though I get to fly to other countries, my my status or my schedule was always would be always so arbitrary per week. We're working at an actual hub. You have like a 9 to 5 sort of schedule, and you can always trade off your schedule and pick up other hours. So I was traveling abroad at least once every other month, if not twice or once every month to another country when I got a chance
That's really cool.
during that 7 years. So yeah, I've been to like over 30 different countries or whatever in my lifetime because I had that bonus to be able to fly for free
What
whenever I
are
wanted.
For me? I've never traveled in like internationally.
Okay.
Maybe you can educate me or whoever's listening and they have never traveled
Yeah.
internationally. What's like what do you find different from like a foreign airport compared to like a US airport?
I would say that so the reason why the airlines are able to act the way that they act and the way that they're able to treat people so poorly is because unfortunately not only because of the namesake of being like United Airlines or Delta Airlines, because they're U.S. companies. You know, I don't know if you've heard this, but there's been many times that they've been bailed out in the past before, right?
I've heard, yeah.
Well, part of that whole bailout is because their company went down. They're failing. I mean, there's not a chance for British Airlines or Qatar Airlines or Singapore Airlines or any of these other international companies not to come in and take more market share, but because I think it's the name brand of being an American company and from America that they got all these bailouts because not only did they want to save American jobs, but they wanted to keep kind of this ambiance of it. Because I'll be honest, to your question, a lot of international airports and airline companies have a much better system. You might pay a little bit more, but you're getting all the perks still. You know, it's not like when you fly international nowadays, you get this crappy little square meal that's been pre-made and warmed up right before you got on the plane. You know, they have real meals. They'll come by and give you snacks. They'll give you as much alcohol as you want, any type of alcohol you want. And this is just you being in their coach. Their seats have a little bit more space. It's just that much cleaner. It's just that much nicer because they kind of run their business better and they have a little bit more respect for people. And they're a little bit different in their mentality. Where American Airlines, I feel, because they know that they can be bailed out, they'll treat you like crap because even if you're mad at them, you're kind of stuck with them because there's not another alternative to that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. You're this is kind of like describing like my loyalty to like Delta at this point because to me I think Delta's awesome. Like I
Okay.
kind of prefer them over any other airline because they give
Even
you
even
snacks.
Southwest?
I've actually never flown with Southwest,
Southwest.
but
Okay.
if they offer me cookies and they have a TV on every seat, you got me. Like
You got
the
you.
like the Biscoff cookies from
Yeah.
Delta, amazing, amazing. And then they give you pop too. I was like, oh my god, I have a
Yeah.
2 hour flight and I get snacks. Like,
Yeah. Which
what
I
more can
think
you
if
ask for?
yeah, I think last time I was on one of those budget ones, they don't even offer you anything, sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. But I don't know if I was gonna say something else. No. But yeah, that's we're approaching the 45-minute mark, which is
Perfect.
kind of that time frame for my podcasts
I
usually.
gotcha. Perfect.
Where can my listeners find you?
Yeah, so if you're into whiskey and you are like me, where I started my podcast because it was the need that, like, you know, you go to the store and you see a big selection of whiskey on the shelf, and you're like, do I buy that $100 bottle one because it's $100? It's supposed to be better, or is it better to spend $20 on a small bottle or a cheaper bottle because I can afford it? But is it really that much better? My kind of podcast came from that. So my podcast is called Whiskey Amateurs, and weekly episodes where we'll take three whiskeys and we'll pit them together from three different price points, and we'll drink them blindly in 3 rounds of competition and we try to decide what is the better whiskey. And then in the end, it's kind of like since you're into sports, Brian, it sounds like it's kind of a competition style. So every bottle that wins, I'll pit it against another bottle of the three later on. And I'm almost done with my first season, but at the end, I'll have a winner of season one of Whiskey Amateurs, and that could be that $100 bottle, or it could be that $20 bottle. So check me out at whiskeyAmateurs.com, Facebook Whiskey Amateurs, or IG at Whiskey Amateur.
Hey, that's awesome, man. I totally love that. Love that idea. I know that for me, I've been a big wine drinker lately, and my
Nice.
girlfriend is really into wine, so she knows like what wines to pick out and like if the expensive ones are really worth it.
Yeah.
But for if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have known that. So your podcast is really good for people who want to drink whiskey. For me, I kind of wish that I liked whiskey more because, like, it's just like that really like gentleman, like wealthy feeling type of drink to me. But
Yeah, but again, there's $20 bottles. One of my favorite bottles, and this is just my personal preference, but if you've ever heard of it, it's Wild Turkey Bourbon, and that's a $20 bottle. But I think because of the smokiness and the flavor of it, I think it's really worth the $20 that you're spending. Why go spend $50 on something that you might not like when you can spend 20 and save it? You know what I mean?
yeah, 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 I totally get that. And if anyone on here is listening and they are a whiskey brewer or something, hit up my boy Paul for a little partner deal or something because I
Yeah, thank
think
you.
that he is on the way of a amazing podcast that I truly support and I will give a listen to because these keep you entertained too because like you said it is like a competition, so these are gonna inspire people to go out and buy it and follow you along.
Thank you. And Brian, if you ever want to be a guest, I'm always looking for people. Maybe we could have you on sometime and see.
Send over the whiskey and then we both can do it.
It's a dealio. All right, man. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Yep, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.